this band.
I'm calling to order our Planning Commission. Thank you guys for being here this evening. Our first order of business is our invocation, and Tim Johnson is going to have that for us this evening.
Shall we pray? Dear God, we ask you watch over the Planning Commission tonight, lead us and guide us in the ways that is best for the city. Also, we'd like to ask your prayers tonight and your healing powers for Enoch Hurd, who was involved in a very serious motor crash, who is one of our reserve police officers. He is needing help and resurrection from his body to be healed, and we ask that you provide that guidance to him. We ask your name, amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Lloyd,
Here.
Member Prieston,
Here.
Member Lehman,
Here.
Member Moody,
Here.
Vice Chairman Givens,
Here.
Chairwoman Gray.
Here. I am ready to entertain a motion on the minutes from our previous meeting, if anybody's ready for that, or entertain discussion.
So move.
We got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Mayor Lloyd,
Yay.
Member Prieston,
Yes.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Givens,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. And with that, we'll skip to new business. And our first case is a zoning case, 2020-24-06 at 5553 Little Debbie Parkway. And I will pass it to staff to walk us through the case.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jason Allen. I'm the staff planner for the city of Collegedale. Before I kind of go into the new zoning case, I do want to discuss the framework plan, the Four Corners plan that was recently introduced. All four staff reports kind of reference that quite frequently. So I just want to give some background on that before. So what is the framework plan? The framework plan, or the Four Corners plan, outlines strategies for transforming Four Corners by addressing land use, community character, connectivity, guiding future investments and developments to support growth within Collegedale long term. As I said, the staff reports reference this pretty frequently tonight. So the missing middle A mix of and missing middle housing options. This includes townhomes, row houses, live and work units, and retail. These units are encouraged to be in the walkable environment that is located along or close proximity to major thoroughfares and are accessible to the city's greenways. The Four Corners plan promotes the development of the missing middle housing and highlights market opportunities to further boost commercial growth. Some parcels in today's meeting have been identified as opportunities for the missing middle housing development in the Four Corners plan. And specifically, that's zoning case 2024-07 and zoning case 2024-09. It might be a little hard to see, but this orange area that you see with the arrow coming over, those are townhomes or the missing middle that are greatly encouraged in certain areas. And those areas are the orange on the vicinity map. The blue arrows pointing to that's the two parcels that are referenced in the above zoning cases. Okay, so moving on, so zoning case 2024-06. The applicant seeks to rezone a 6.2 acre parcel located at 5553 Little Debbie Parkway from shopping center commercial to multifamily residential or R3. This development will consist of 40 townhome-like dwellings at 6.5 units an acre, a community clubhouse, a community pool, a dog park, and garages. Access to the development will be provided from the flagged portion of the proposed lot, which shares an entrance with the parking lot at 5559 Little Debbie Parkway. So here's a vicinity map of that. That portion to the southeast, that is what cuts through the parking lot and gives access to that lot to the rear. This is behind the optometry center, the dermatologist in El Henty, and I believe T-Mobile is also in that strip center. So it is not the parcel to the north, it is directly behind it. So here's the zoning map. To the north, you have Interstate Commercial District, which is C3. That's kind of where Cracker Barrel is, and the hotel is directly north of that. To the east, you have Shopping Center Commercial, C2. To the south, you have Shopping Center Commercial, C2. And to the west, you have Convenience Commercial, C2, which is Hamilton counties. So here's the surrounding land use. To the north, you have commercial, which, as I said, was Cracker Barrel and the current hotel, alongside with the creek. To the east, you have commercial. To the south, you have commercial. And to the west, you have vacant land. So here's an overall site plan I will go on to in a large site plan. But to the south of this plan is where the ingress and egress will be into the 40-unit townhome complex. It will be gated. So here's an enlarged site plan. So other than the 40 units, there is 2 structures. One is a 5-car garage, a 6-car garage, and another structure would be a clubhouse along with a pool and a dog park. All have parking that meet requirements and sidewalks. So here's the R3 requirements. I'll just briefly leave this up on the slide. I'll save everyone some pain and not go through every single one. But the applicant, the way they're proposing, it is one single lot. It's more of like an apartment complex that you might be familiar with. Each of those units will not have their own lot, so that the applicant definitely meets all the front, rear, and side setback requirements on that. So staff comments. The R3 district allows for a high-density residential use, such as mobile home parks, apartments, which may be incompatible with adjacent areas, potentially leading to spot zoning concerns. Even heavily conditioning this project, it is challenging to guarantee that the townhome type product will be built as proposed in this project. The developer refers to the proposed units as townhomes, but they do not meet the City of Collegedale's townhome definition. The proposed units are 3 stories, exceeding the city's 2.5-story limit under the R1T zone, which is our townhouse zone district. And in one instance, proposes 7 consecutive units, while the city defines townhomes as dwellings in a row of up to 6. Per the dwelling townhome definition, lastly, staff is unaware of the width of each townhome. The challenge to guarantee that a townhome type product will be built as proposed in this project, the The introduction of high-density residential uses like multifamily dwellings, apartments, mobile home parks, which are allowed under the R3 zone, will negatively affect the character of the neighboring area. If zoning changes disproportionately benefit a particular property owner or developer while impacting neighboring property owners, it could be seen as an unfair practice and result in spot zoning. In short, the R3 multifamily residential district allows uses and densities that are significantly different from those in adjacent areas on Little W Parkway. The option of heavily conditioning this project to only allow townhomes would essentially change the description and intent behind the R3. And as I said previously, the way this is proposed, that is, these units do not meet the townhouse definition per our zoning code. Staff communicated that to the applicant review the residential zero lot line townhouse district, which is R1T, for developing townhomes. The zoning aims to prevent spot zoning issues and was intended as a missing middle and infill zoning option when added to the current zoning ordinance. So when this was presented as a new zone to the zoning ordinance, Kelly, the other planning director, he presented this to Planning Commission as, you know, R1T is something that's missing that the city needs for homes. And he intended this to be an infill zoning for parcels that might find it difficult to have something else constructed there, such as this one. It's far off the public right-of-way view. There's some wetland items there. It'd probably be very difficult to have that developed as a commercial zone. The R1T zone can the R1T zone can better serve the public by providing specific housing types, promoting efficient land uses, and ensuring green space. It is essential that the rezoning benefits the broader the community and addresses housing needs without disproportionately favoring individual property owners. Staff also informed the applicant during the pre-doc submittal meeting that the R1T zone district would be more appropriate than the requested R3. The recommendation was to reiterate, this recommendation was reiterated in a subsequent email communication, where staff also indicated that if the applicant chose to proceed with the R3 zoning request, staff would likely recommend denial to the Planning Commission. Depending on what is submitted, and I want to be very clear on that, it really depends on what's submitted. I don't have anything in front of me that was submitted as R1T at this point, or maybe not even in the future yet. Staff could likely support a zone change to the residential zero lot line townhouse district, which is R1T, as it aligns with the missing middle housing concept, providing a balanced density that complements the surrounding areas. Given the property's location, the R1T zone offers an appropriate transition between commercial areas, fostering a more compatible development pattern. The zoning would also promote walkability, offering future residents convenient pedestrian access to nearby restaurants and commercial areas, enhancing the overall connectivity and livability of the community, and as encouraged by the Four Corners plan. So this is where it gets a little tricky. My next couple slides, you will see that I am recommending denial. However, if the commission feels differently and wants to approve this project, I just ask that these conditions are placed on that approval if there's a motion to approve the project. So unfortunately, I'll go through them. The zoning approval is limited to the development of townhomes. No other types of residential uses allowed under R3, such as mobile homes, apartments, or other multifamily structures are permitted on the property. The maximum allowable density shall be 6.5 units per acre. All dwelling units constructed on the property must be designed and used exclusively as townhomes. No building shall exceed 35 feet or 2.5 stories in height. Mobile homes, condos, and apartment complexes, as otherwise permitted under the R3 zone, are explicitly prohibited as part of the zoning approval. A detailed site plan for townhome development must be submitted for site and civil review prior to the issuance of any building permit. The plan must comply with all applicable city regulations for townhome developments, including parking, green space, and infrastructure. Any further modifications to the approved use of this property to allow additional types of residential structures beyond townhomes or a change in density will require a separate zoning request or amendment subject to the approval by the Planning Commission and City Commission. The townhome development shall fully comply with the city's landscape ordinance and commercial multifamily design ordinance. All landscaping requirements, including tree planting, buffer zones, green spaces, must meet or exceed the standards set forth in the landscape ordinance. Additionally, the development, architectural design, building materials, and site layout shall adhere to the commercial multifamily design ordinance to ensure aesthetic quality and harmony with surrounding properties. Compliance will be verified during the site and civil review process. All street widths within development shall be subject to review and approval by the city engineer and fire marshal. The reason for this condition is because the applicant is proposing a gated community, which is private streets. So we want to ensure that emergency services and other items like that could get in and out in case of an emergency. Street designs must ensure adequate access for emergency vehicles and comply with city standards for safety, traffic flow, and infrastructure. No building permits will be issued until the street plans receive formal approval from both the city engineer and fire marshal. The development shall comply with the City of Collegedale zoning ordinance definition for townhomes, which limits each attached row of townhomes to a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 dwelling units. Each unit must be designed as a one-family dwelling with no other dwellings directly above or below, with direct ground level access to the outside, and separated from other units by one or more fire-resistant wall. Number 11, the development must include the construction of a dog park and a clubhouse as shown on the applicant's proposal. The clubhouse shall match the aesthetics and property of the dwellings. These amenities shall be completed and fully operational prior to the issuance of the final occupancy permits for any residential units unless granted by the building official. Sidewalks must be provided throughout the development, extending to the gates and exits of the complex to ensure walkability. These sidewalks should be designed to connect the development to nearby restaurants and other commercial areas, promoting pedestrian access. The sidewalks must comply with all city standards for width, material, and accessibility, and be shown on the final site plan prior to approval by the city engineer. The developer has requested to change or remove condition number 4 and number 10. Removing condition number 4 would allow the applicant to build up to 3 stories. Condition number 4 is the height requirement, which limits only 2.5 stories or 35 feet. Removing the condition number 10 would allow the applicant to construct a row of dwellings greater than 6, and this would not meet the definition of our townhome. Staff is recommending denial due to the inability to guarantee a straightforward final product of the described dwelling. As applied, the units do not align with the city's townhome definition. Additionally, concerns about the potential spot zoning and shift in the intent of the R3 zone contribute to this recommendation. With all that, staff recommends the denial of zoning case 2024-06.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there questions for staff, discussion amongst ourselves before I call the applicant forward?
So I'm concerned about spot zoning number 1. To me, that is spot zoning.
I agree.
When you're integrating the townhome into a commercial zone, and that's always been you can't do it. And if if we should ever allow 3 stories, my opinion, and I'm sure the fire marshal will back me, it's going to have to be sprinkled for safety. And I will tell you, that's a drop dead for me if they don't do that.
Guess I just have one question. So relative to spot zoning, obviously because it's commercial, nothing else around it. I guess I'm just want to make sure you may recommend, is it R1T?
Yes.
How would an R1T compared to an R3 not be the same potential
So I believe in
concern with spot zoning?
2021 or 2022, Kelly Martin, the old City of Collegedale planning director, he brought that zone because we had some parcels like the one that we have tonight that are zone commercial or zone something else, but it's difficult to develop just given the location or given any wetlands on the property. So Kelly had anticipated that zone to be infill, which he did want to avoid spot zoning, but his intention with that was to develop middle housing and infill on properties. So
there's precedent in it, and I think
there's precedent
and
and
comment about a transition kind of.
yeah, and he's on the record, saying exactly what I just said now.
Okay.
And directly across the street to the east off Jack Kate, I believe it was last year, the Planning Commission just approved the R1T zone. The closest R3, I believe, is off Appleton Pike. If you're going westbound towards the 75, almost to where you're out of the city of Collegedale limits. I believe it's Integra. If you go south down Little Debbie, there are apartments there, but that's zoned MUTC. So R3 is pretty far from,
So there's R1T in the area, I guess.
yeah, directly across the street. So
I love the idea of walkability because I think that's what we desperately lack in this city. And I'll look forward to hearing from the applicant as to how flexible their plans may be.
Just for clarification, how are we defining 3 stories?
so we don't have an actual, I guess, height limit, as in 35 feet or anything like that. It's just written as 3 stories in the R3 zone.
So is that garage at the bottom and 2 livable stories above, or what is 3?
It would be any constructed roofable or floorable, where you put another floor on top of that from the grade up, from the average grade height in front of the
But
property.
that wouldn't include a subterranean garage.
No.
No, okay.
Or a drive? Well, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like if we go down what we've got down here at Southern, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't Southern originally. And those are all 3 stories if you're actually looking at it.
Our ordinance, if I'm recalling correctly, says anything above the average grade on the property is considered a story. It doesn't usually when you get into below grade, that's considered a basement. It doesn't specify garages or anything like that.
Yeah, but I'm going back to, you drive in, got the garage on the bottom, the ground floor, the road floor.
Mhm.
And then you take the stairs on the outside to get up to the door.
Yeah. So I believe it's 50 or 60% of the average grade. I had a case a couple of years ago
Got those.
Yeah, we do.
with a gentleman with a similar situation, and that garage was considered technically a basement because it was below the average grade. So,
Okay.
but I mean, that's some of the issues that I'm having defining this R3.
That have 3 stories.
Is it livable space,
Yeah.
3 stories versus the garage?
Yeah.
Spalding Cove.
So those over there are not 3 stories, they're 2.
The ones off of,
Spalding Cove.
Spartan Coat, because
are
there's
3
not
stories.
3 livable levels.
I'm not familiar with them.
That's how I've always.
I'm not familiar exactly with them. I'm assuming they're not considered a story below.
Jason, are you using the building code definition for stories?
I'm using the zoning code, the City of Collegedale zoning code.
So is that basement habitable or no? Just garage.
Okay. More questions, more discussion?
And then, I mean, you mentioned the sidewalks, but they connect it to the property line. right?
Yeah, that's correct.
That would be the expectation, right?
Yeah, it's a little difficult.
There's no other sidewalks coming from the medical place and the restaurant.
I believe there is some coming up past El Gente's, the restaurant. It's like this circular sidewalk that goes up, but someone would have to cross the parking lot to get there. Not the entirety, but just one drive aisle, I believe.
Yeah, so, but the expectation of the applicant would be to their property line.
Yeah, and their property line goes all the way down to Little Debbie Pike, or Little Debbie Parkway, because it's that flag. So that's probably something I would work with them to
Yeah, I'm
see.
just making sure we're defining the limits of what they would be responsible for.
Okay.
They're not responsible for anything outside their
No.
limits. Okay.
Jason, in previous discussions, we've had issues with private roads. Do I understand this one would be private?
So the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the main reason for this R3 request was the ability to have private roads in a gated community. If this was a R1T zone, it would have to be public streets. Our subdivision ordinance for the city of Collegedale requires that any residential lot needs to abut to a public roadway. So it needs public roadway frontage access.
So that confuses the issue even more.
Yeah. This was discussed in, the zoning cleanup about the potential of adding private roads, and just staff does not feel comfortable adding private roads. Our consultants did not think it was a good idea either. So the new zoning ordinance update still requires that everything needs to be on a public street.
I think we got to answer some of the questions that's been asked up here. What defines a 2.5 story versus 3 story from that perspective? And I'm assuming streetlights is a part of this development as well?
Well, not in the interior because they're private streets.
Okay.
So how do you define that half a story?
Yeah, usually I believe it's the overhang. It's an opened up area. So
Like a
yeah,
split foyer?
I believe so. Again, it's another reason that we're redoing the rewrite because stuff like that isn't called out or defined in our zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, it's rather confusing, and you end up in situations like this.
Is there room for a play area for kids?
I think there was a dog park, a pool house. Mike, was there anything as a playground or anything like that? I don't believe there was.
We didn't specifically show one, but around the pool area, there probably would be something that could be added there.
Because I think, in my opinion, not the board's here, but I have to see some type of play activities for kids in the communities.
I had another question regarding roads. I drove out there today and I did notice coming in and out of Little Debbie Parkway that it's just a single lane either going in or the egress. Would that be required with these homes going back there? Would that be required to be widened? So the egress would have 2 lanes for turning right and left?
Not that I'm aware of. That wasn't a comment from our civil engineers.
Okay,
But from a planning standpoint, I'm not aware of anything that would make them required
okay.
to open that up.
So you're going to allow a one-way traffic street?
Where? Inside the parking lot, or
Mhm.
it would just be as it sits today, a single drive aisle with, was it east and west traffic going into the complex?
And the business owners, property owners, are they agreeable to that?
I'm not sure. This is just the preliminary stage is the zoning. They do have to come back and do a subdivision. That's usually what captures all of that kind of those items when you find out the new meets and bounds. That's where we get the actual, concrete. This is what it's going to look like. This is where all the ingress and ingress is going to be, and stuff like that.
So
Wait,
can you put the
Yeah.
aerial back up that shows the flag log? Just real quick, just a question too, also on the parking expectation there. Is that the parking that's striped there? That's not, it's not meeting an ordinance for the existing lot to the right or to the northeast.
I believe everything to the northeast has ample parking. I'm not sure if Mike wants to come up. There is a drive aisle or parking spaces right that goes through their flag lot. I'm not sure if there's an intent to move that or to leave it. Again, we haven't received, site and civil. We haven't received a replat for this or anything like that, which usually they do come to the commission with that at the same time. But this is just for the zoning.
So is this, and Mike, you may be able to better to answer this, but is that striped parking that this lot's responsibility to maintain?
So why don't we take it just from this point? Mike, we'd like to invite you to come forward as the applicant to talk about the case. We obviously have some questions for you. If you would start by stating your name and address. And I just want to address the other people who are attending our meeting that after Mr. Price here talks, there will be a time for public comment. So if you'd like to come up and speak to this case, you'll be given that opportunity as well.
Okay, thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineer, 7380 Applegate Lane, Chattanooga. Passing out before you are some sheets that give you a little bit of a blow up as it relates to the plan that is before you. So questions that you've had starting off are great. Let me sort of touch base, if I might, on some of those. The idea is to remove the parking that is currently on this parcel. There is plenty of parking as it relates on the rest of the development. That parking got added. If you look at the way that it's sort of shaded differently, that parking was added later on in anticipation that there might be some other commercial development to occur, which never has. The applicant has owned this property since 2008. In the time since then, which is some 16 years, he has had 0 offers for commercial. So there's just not an appetite to put anything on this as there once was. So we started looking at what we think would work. We understand that there is I don't know if I'd use the word disdain, but there's a lack of encouragement certainly to do apartments in Collegedale, and I understand that. So we looked at townhomes. We were encouraged to do R1T. Here's the problem. Do you know how many units I can put on this under R1T? 1. Why? I only have a 30-foot ingress egress easement, which is split between 2 properties. I have a 45-foot wide right-of-way, if you will, that comes through there. But out of that, it's taken up in a parking easement if you look on the plans. So there is no opportunity to do R1T. This is far different than what we ran over to on the east side. So all I've got is a 30-foot ingress egress easement. That's it. There's no other access viable to me. So we don't propose to build streets. We propose to build a private ingress egress, gated community. You come in, once you pass through the gates, we're providing parking garages. We're providing 3-story buildings. Now, there was discussion about 3-unit buildings versus 2.5. Understand at 2.5, you actually can inhabit that 3rd floor, that half. It just means that your first floor may be 1,000 square feet, your second floor is 1,000 square feet, and then you cut down to 400 square feet. That's 2.5 stories. It's really a 3-story building. We'll just call it 2.5. So we're really not doing anything different than what's allowed, other than we're just simply going up vertically, and we're not trying to squeeze down that last story. We're trying to keep these units between 1,500 and 1,900 square feet. They're basically 18 feet wide. We would love to be able to put these and use a horizontal property regime and put these on individual lots. But again, R1T was not an option. You can't do it. It just makes no sense to put 1 unit and call that a day. So we looked at R3 because it gave us the flexibility to do everything that R1T provides utilizing the R3 zone. So if you look at what Jason's put together, this acts, walks, quacks, everything that you would expect R1T to be. The only difference is that we will not be on a public street. We'll be on private road, private drives. We've got all the amenities that one could want as it relates to the area. I've had conversations with the fire chief. We would certainly look at, if you go to the site plan, there are 6 units there on the back side. Units 35 through 40 that are closest down here to the bottom, right here. Those, because they don't sit out on the paved area, we would 100% be sprinkling those buildings. We're fine going to meet the definition to go 6 units. That would basically pull us down to 39. I think if you look at the conditions that are proposed by staff as it relates to if the commission deems it worthy to go with the proposed zone R3 with R1T conditions overlaid on top of it, we have to come back. We have to provide you architectural plans. We have to provide you the overall site plans. We got to provide a plat. Everything is in there in the terms of checks and balances to make certain that what we are saying today, what I'm saying today, will be exactly what Collegedale gets. We're having connectivity. We're absolutely doing that. We want that. The businesses in through here should be excited to have more patrons right there in the back door. But if you try to look at where this sits off of Little Debbie Parkway, it's just not convenient or available for a commercial use. No one's looked at it for 16 years. So given that, this is the use that we're looking at. Now, if you want to look at what this sort of looks like, if you are familiar with Goodwin Road in Chattanooga, where the Walmart is, if you go down Goodwin Road towards East Brainerd Elementary, you pass the first roundabout. As you come to the second roundabout, it's on your right if you're heading east on Goodwin Road. And that's what these are mirrored after, basically. They're really a nice product. Architecturally, they are certainly in keeping. We would certainly balance that out as it relates to the current architecture that's out here. I think it would be a really plus for Collegedale. It's just R1T and my hands are tied. I don't have an option going that route. So I picked the R3 for those reasons. So that sort of gives a brief overall. I would point out, so as it relates to the conditions, that number one, it states the zoning is limited to development of townhomes. It probably should also add garages, since that's what we're doing. And probably even a clubhouse might even be mentioned as well. No building shall exceed 3 stories. I think that is, again, it's in keeping. If you look at the floor plans with what we're doing, again, everything is 3 stories. That's what we're looking at accomplishing. I would point out on 6 is that this plan must comply with all applicable city regulations for townhomes, including parking, green space, and infrastructures. I would say that we are not meeting the requirement for public streets. We will have to meet all the fire code requirements, but we don't want to be able to, or we don't want to be tied to the public street because I can't. I have a 30-foot ingress egress easement. That's all I have. And I can't manufacture something that I don't have. That would also be in keeping with number 9. Street widths and street designs. We don't really have streets. We have ingress egress, we have driveways, but we don't have streets. Just because of, again, what we're limited to. On number 10, if you want to limit it to no more than 6 units connected, I'm fine with that. Again, that would put us at 39 units.
And Mike, that's only, just to be clear, based on what you've proposed at the moment, that's dropping only 3 units.
It's only dropping 1.
1 unit? Okay.
We would go from 40 to 39.
Okay.
There's 2 7-unit buildings in the plan. The units that are against the creek, you have 4, 7, 4. What we would do is go to 4, 6, 5, or some combination thereof.
Okay. You just
So
shift
that-
it to another block.
Right.
Got it.
And then on the other side, on the left side, as you come in, we would just drop a unit, give us a little bit more green space, and just go to 6 and call it a day.
And these are rental townhomes. These are not for purchase.
What I would really like, and I've talked with the developer about this, we are fine if we can get a horizontal property regime, putting these on individual lots and try to go for a for sale product. I think Collegedale has that ability. I know that we can do that in Chattanooga.
I know off the top of my head, townhome, the lot width has to be at least 24 feet.
We're not, we're at 18,
Yeah.
but we're R3, and I don't know that R3, what is,
R3 is not really designated to be lots. I'd have to double check to see. Hang on.
While he's looking, Mike, is that like what you're thinking on the south side downtown, where those units are individually owned, yet they're laid out like a townhome,
yeah, they're all connected, but you own the ground.
even though it's
Well, you don't own the ground, you own the building.
building?
It's like a condo. It's the horizontal property regime is just a fancy word that we use now for condominium projects.
So this is what the lot width says. It says the minimum lot frontage on any public street, which we're not necessarily doing, and the minimum lot width at the building line shall be no less than 100 feet. In the case of cul-de-sacs, all lots shall front on the turnout right-of-way line for the distance no less than 25 feet.
So we may have to go to BOZA as it relates to that in order to get,
Yeah, as I said, R3 is not really intended to be individual lots. It's, integrated apartments and stuff like that. It's one big parcel owned by an entity. So,
okay, yeah. And again, it's just R1T. I don't have that as an option. It's just, it's not anything that I can utilize to make that work as far as that goes.
just so I can put on the record, I want to give you the definitions of our basement and our story for the zoning ordinance. So it says a basement, a story partially or wholly underground. For the purpose of height measurement, a basement shall be counted as a story when more than 1/2 of its height is above the average ground elevation. When used for commercial activities, a basement shall be counted as a story. And then our story definition is for a story, the portion of a building included between the upper surface of any floor and the upper surface of the next floor above. A story cannot exceed 10 feet.
But what you're saying is with 1,400, you're in compliance with the 2.5 story.
That meets it, but I don't think that architecturally that's going to look as good. versus what we're doing where you keep everybody the same all the way the
Right.
height across, where you can do some insteps back and forth, but you really do not want to start chopping down that top floor to create sort of a snaggletooth look, if you will,
Yeah.
out of that.
In looking at the three pictures you submitted, the first two, I don't think that's a look that we would want. The one on the bottom, I think, is a look that it would be, and it would enhance what we're trying to accomplish here in Collegedale, in my opinion.
And I knew that when I put those in there, but what I found was this was one that was in downtown Chattanooga. And so I took some pictures of that just to show another example. The one that we intend to do is the one that there's only one picture of. And that's one that's out there on Goodwin Road. And again, we're looking at brick, you're looking at stucco, you're looking at, cement fibrous materials. It's a good product. And that's what we want to look at doing here as well. And I think if you look through the findings where it talks about, what you really want to achieve in R1T, it's achieving every one of the tenets that's mentioned here by staff as it relates to walkability, your desire to have this middle housing product. We're doing all of those things. I just need to use another vehicle to get there. And that's the reason that we picked the R3.
But basically what you're building is an apartment complex.
It's a townhouse complex under an R3 zone.
It's not a townhouse.
It is if they're all 6 units.
It's not a townhouse. Townhouses are on lots of fee simple.
But if we put it in a horizontal property regime, you own it. That's not the same as an apartment where you can't own it.
That's a condo, which is an apartment by definition.
Maybe definition, but I would say that that's not in keeping with any apartment complexes I'm aware of anywhere in our area. It may be by building definition, but I don't think it is by the normal layman's terms of what he would expect or see or she.
And townhouses have other construction requirements also.
Correct. That's one of the things that we would be working with Matt and other staff members as it relates to making certain that we fall in compliance to all of those things.
Mike, I'm not familiar with the terrain behind it. Is there any flood issues, floodway, floodplains?
So if you look on the site plan, there is a floodway that runs parallel with Wolf Deaver Creek. We're staying outside and beyond that. This area was filled in some years ago. So we're staying out of the floodway. We'll be above it by at least 2 feet for all the structures. I don't believe that this was one of the maps that was changing, as I best remember, when we looked at. So I don't think that the elevations in this area was changing. If they do, we'll accommodate that accordingly. But if you really look at it, you're eaten up by all sorts of easement. There's a gas easement, there's sewer easements, you got a floodway. Even though it's 6.2 acres, your usable footprint's probably half that. And it's in an odd configuration. And an odd configuration really doesn't fit for a commercial use because you can't put in your normal rectangular square building that most people want to see and then have your parking run around it. It's just an odd usable, area that we have. And so that's what we came up with after 16 years of struggling and coming up with plans. Honestly, I was just driving down the road one day, saw a development, and I said, that would work. And that's how I picked it. And it certainly meets a housing need that I think, which staff has pointed out, Jason has indicated that you need.
Jason, can you check the maps for the new floodplain?
Yeah, the last I heard with the maps that I believe they were in litigation. So that's why they haven't been released yet. But I could double check on those.
'Cause I thought they had been released.
I think they were, and then they ended up in litigation. So they were on a pause.
Yeah. I think you can view the preliminary maps,
Comment.
but you don't have the final firm panels have not been released. But I don't think this was one that was having any changes to it, as I remember.
And I don't know if there's any changes to this as on staff, and I'm not aware.
Well, it sounds as if the property owner is open to ideas in terms of what this could potentially look like. What I see in our city is a need for people to want to buy their own homes as opposed to renting an apartment.
Sure.
But I understand that is a possibility.
If we can get the horizontal property regime. That's the only option that I'm aware of where we could do that, because I don't have the frontage. I can't build a public street. But we have gotten variances on other similar type developments where you have limited access in other jurisdictions, and they've all functioned just fine under that manner. That's what we would look at here or propose.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I think to the mayor's point, and I guess this first one's for Jason. This will go design review based on the conditions relative to townhomes.
Yeah, design
There'll
review,
be-
site and civil.
So there'll be discussions on materials, what they look like architecturally. So there will be some involvement or some comment from staff that
Yeah.
hopefully they may not look like the first two, but they may look
Yeah,
hardened and meet those kind of conditions relative to
yes.
architectural review. And then I guess this, I anticipate the developer thought this would always be commercial. That's why they only have a 40-foot flag. They put a parking easement over it, and now they only have a 30-foot access easement. It was always thought to be commercial. And the problem is it's not going to be commercial. It may be residential. And because of those limitations that were set many years ago, an HPR, R3 type development's the only option. And we've done some HPRs in the county. I know they do them in the city. And so you can own the structure, and I think you lease the ground. I think to the point, it's kind of halfway between a condo model and so there are some probably some things that from a definition don't make it a townhome because it's not fee simple with lot lines. It almost works like a commercial apartment type site with some other types of ownership options for residential.
I'd agree with that assessment. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's,
What's the total parking spaces again?
I know it's on the plan. I'm thinking it was like 79 or 87.
Yeah, it's around there, Mike. It was 78. But they did meet parking.
87
Do I-
with the garages.
They meet parking as proposed. They met the parking centers.
Yeah, we wanted to have more than 2 spaces per unit.
Yeah.
I just think that, and as you see, we've got some that are 1 bedroom, some that are 2, some that are 3. By definition, it relates to what is required, we could have done less. I didn't want to do less. I did not want to end up creating a burden for the commercial development and have people park there and then walk into the development. The idea is if you're coming to visit, go park in here. Don't go park at the Mexican restaurant or anybody else's place.
Okay, let's take a moment for public comment. So if anybody's attending, just come up and would like to speak, just come up to the microphone, say your name and your address, and we'd be happy to hear what your thoughts are on this rezoning case.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ellie Kim. I'm the owner of the building of the dermatology practice at 5545 Little Debbie Parkway. I just had a question or a comment actually. I was actually interested in the property right beside my building, not the entire acreage there, but because we just opened a year and a half ago and we're getting very busy, and I rent out the space as well to an ophthalmology group, and they're not even at full capacity yet. They're going to get busier as well. Our parking space there is pretty limited, and I know there's one area that you said that nobody's using that parking spot, but it's starting to be used more because since COVID, it's the influx of people coming to Ottawa has been tremendous, and commercial spots are becoming harder and harder to find. So I think that area, the interest will be growing. I know 16 years ago when it first was listed, it probably wasn't, but now it's getting there. And of course, you probably understand that road, that easement is my main entrance to my parking lot. So it's going to cause some problems for me. I want to make sure that there is any conflict there. So that's my main concerns. Also, the parking, I know you mentioned you have 70 parking spots or whatever. I don't want, I just want to make sure that there's no people going to be using that to walk over through the gate, outside the gate. That's obviously another concern.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this case?
I just wanted to ask a question for clarification for me. Debbie Baker, City of Collegedale. What demographics of people are we looking at for purchasing or the properties here? Like, are we looking more retirement facility? Are we looking for families? Or is what I'm asking, is it just open a range?
And is that do you have any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Okay,
The only thing I'd like to know, because I'm really big on parks, and I know, and it depends. I mean, if you're a retirement facility or something like that, walking sidewalks and things are just fine. But if there's going to be children there, I was looking to see if there's some small area to place like a little walking park, like a parent in that area, and since it's going to be what I call self-contained or closed off. So I was looking at that. Is my main thing for right now.
okay. Thank you. Before I call you back up, anybody else from the audience wishing to speak to this case?
Hi, I'm Susie Kim, also representing 5545 Little Debbie Parkway. So as they mentioned, it is a one-lane either way coming in and out of the property. Is there any way that there's room to make a designated lane to turn right and left going out? I don't know if there's space or not, just because I can anticipate the traffic will tremendously increase.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So as it relates to the ingress coming in and out of the development, there's not room to add a center turn lane. I would point out the fact that these being commercial offices, they're typically not going to be open till 9 or 10 o'clock, while most people would be leaving between the 7 and 8 o'clock hour in the morning. They'll be returning at about the same time that in a PM, there would be far more traffic, I would see. But in those instances, they're not leaving, they're coming home at that point. Typically, 39, 40 units does not constitute a need for a center turn lane. That's been my experience. I'm not a traffic engineer, but have seen hundreds of studies. And so I think I can say that with a relative confidence that a center turn lane would not be necessary. So Commissioner, you and your fellow commissioner, Mr. Johnson, have the same thought process. And so we will be adding a playground is what I've heard through this process, if this body deems it appropriate to approve out of that. And as it relates to the families, so we're envisioning these being $400,000 to $500,000 townhomes. Being 3 stories and being 62, I'm not moving into those because I'm not climbing all those flights of stairs. So I see this being more young families. You do have some 1-bedrooms. So in those instances, you could have some single individuals, maybe someone that, someone's divorced or whatever might want to move into here and stay. But as a general rule, I think this is going to be tailored more towards a younger crowd, just for the fact that there's 3 stories in total of what we're proposing. So these are without garages. There are garages that are available on site where people could rent, if you will, and park their car in there. But the rest of it is surface parking. I think we showed 11. I think there's 11 garage spaces, and then the rest is surface parking on this.
Hey, Mike, on spaces 35 through 40, are those only walkable?
They are.
So nobody can park over there or drive, so you have to carry your clothes and everything?
They're going to be less convenient. They probably won't sell for the same price of what the others will, but I don't quite think that it would fit my needs, but I can tell you, having visited so many other areas, especially my youngest daughter who went to school at Lexington in Kentucky and now is in Chicago, this is not uncommon in so many other places. And given the demographics that are moving into our areas, this is not something that people like 25 years ago would have said, there's no way. people now find something like this and it really doesn't bother them.
And I think, I mean, we got to be careful of not being opinionated, because I have the same thing where, like, I could go to the East Brainerd ball field and we put a neighborhood right beside the ball fields, and I would say I would never do that, me personally. But they've sold every house in that street that sits next to a ball field with lights on every night and kids screaming and playing, right? So I think we just got to be careful about our own opinions versus the demographics that may still need those types of things too, right? So I think for me, I see the city of Chattanooga doing several things along this type of flavor. And I think if we can kind of come to a middle ground of things that meet the expectation of what Collegedale wants to be branded for and known for, I think there's some hurdles that we've got to overcome with the roads and stuff like that. But I think ultimately, I've seen units like these look very nice. I've had some friends that own one downtown. There's street parking. There's no garages. They sell and they resell very well, right? I'll just say that from personal experience. So I just wanted that to be said. So.
Good point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason, I wanted to ask, earlier, Mr. Price said, hey, if this was in R1T, he could only put one unit on it only. However, you have advocated in your report that, you feel like the R1T zone is what should be here. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah. As I said during the presentation, that was a recommendation. We haven't had anything actually submitted. It would highly depend on what kind of site plan was submitted for the R1T zone, to see if staff was willing, to bring a recommendation for approval for that. So when it comes down to it, this is just the preliminary zoning stage of this. Site and civil usually comes after that. So we haven't seen any site and civils for an R1T zone. I don't know if it's true or not, if you could only put one townhome on there or not. So it's difficult to say without anything in concrete or written down that's scaled for us to review. If I don't have something to review, it's difficult to speak on that.
Right. So today we have this site plan in front of us, but that's not what we're voting. We are voting just the zoning.
Correct.
Big
Yeah.
picture philosophically.
Yes. They will be
You're comfortable.
held to, they will not, let's say this gets approved today. Since this was approved through the zoning, they would not be able to add any more units after this. They could go less, but that's essentially it. This really holds into, the amount of units per acre.
Okay. And can you also remind me about the gated community? I know that we've had this discussion multiple times over the years. Is Collegedale now allowing gated communities, or is that also a big sticking point in this zoning, or is that going to hit when we hit the site plan?
So as Mike has drawn this would be allowed. As it's one parcel, it already does have the frontage. It's just like an apartment complex, like Integra and stuff.
Okay.
They all have gated communities. They all have public street frontage. But on the interior, they're all separate units, but that they're not fee simple. So the R1T zone would require them to do an inner public street. And all those townhomes would have to touch that frontage on the public street.
Okay. And with the looking at trying to make these fee simple isn't the right word. You use the word. Okay, thank you. Is that something that we've currently done within the city of Collegedale, the horizontal property ownership?
Not that I'm aware of. And the city, we try to stay out of ownership because when it comes down to it, as the government agency, we don't really get into who owns the property, who owns any.
But do we have other housing?
The closest thing I could think of is probably Appleton Villas.
Okay.
So will today's vote allow condos that people can purchase?
So technically, yes. Let's say this gets approved and gets approved with conditions. As I said, the townhomes that are proposed do not meet our definition of townhomes. So I'm not sure what to classify these as because they just don't meet our townhome definition in our ordinance. And that's one of my problems with this. I can't guarantee the final product of what's going to happen.
But approval of that subject to a later vote.
So if this got approved tonight, they could come with site and civil after it hit city commission. If that city commission approves it, 15 days after that, they could submit site and civil. This would not need to come back to the commission.
But the recommendation from the planning or from your office is not to approve this?
My recommendation for this project is to deny this project. There's just too many what ifs for staff.
To deny the zoning request.
Yes, deny the zoning request.
But hypothetically, your office, if it came back as an R1T, meeting those parameters, putting townhomes in this area is philosophically.
Yes, hypothetically, if something came in that met all the R1T standards, staff would be open to that. Just referencing the Four Corners plan, the city of Collegedale is in need for residential units. Middle ground housing, townhomes, that was one of the biggest ones that we saw. I think it really pushed economical growth and commercial development within the city as well.
I move to deny this.
Okay, I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Okay, is there further discussion before I call for a vote?
Further discussion to me would be, I think conceptually, we've got something here that could be a credit to the community and something that sounds like a reasonable thing to do. I think we've got a number of bureaucratic hurdles and whatnot and hoops to jump through to make it happen. So I hope this doesn't discourage people going further ahead.
Okay, there's more discussion. Hang on just a second. Yes.
No, I just a comment. So, and just relative to the zoning, and just for some clarification. So the only difference if this was approved, and it may not, but if this was approved R3 with those 11 conditions, that give some opportunities for design review, all these other reviews that hopefully take out the risk relative to what you get. Really, at the end, the only difference in this development and an R1T would be public roads and public road frontage, which
Which you can't do.
which can't do relative to at least access, which obviously is something that happened many years ago that's just, and it would be, so no lot lines and no public streets are the two.
For the R3, yeah. So the R1T, it would be a minimum of 20-foot lot widths. It requires a 20% green space. It does not require the amenities that Mike is proposing. But given that he's set precedent for that, we'd probably still ask for that in a condition. And you're limited to 35 feet or 2.5 stories.
Okay.
So a couple of things. One is I've been practicing engineering for over 40 years. I've had my own firm for 28 years. If I tell this body or any other body, I'm going to bring this back, this is not a bait and switch, I would hope that y'all would understand and believe what I'm telling you, because it's not worth it for me to do anything that would endanger my reputation or me simply stating what is the truth. So I was wrong. There's not one townhome that you could build. It's two. Surely to goodness, this body can see that two townhomes, because I've only got 42 feet, 45 feet, thereabouts of frontage. Can't build a public road. It's just not an option. But I could flag off too and build a 2-unit townhouse, and that's it. That just doesn't make any sense. It's an unwise use of land. It's commercial that can't be utilized, and we've tried for years. So I get it that it's a hard ask in terms of the fact that we're using an R3 mechanism to get to where we're trying to get to give what everyone recognizes is, I think, the right use in the plan. I just don't have another mechanism to pull the trigger with. And that's the problem. And again, I don't say that in a manner that is trying to be disparaged about the rules and regulations that Collegedale has. We probably would run in this same situation if I was in Collegedale or Hamilton County. But I think the merits of the project are such that the paperwork it's going to take to get through it and the way this will look when we're finished will be something that Collegedale will want. So again, I would hope that y'all would see the merits and hopefully give this a thumbs up. Thank you.
Just a question for Mike. Mike, have you guys looked at bringing the public street all the way down to Little Debbie through the access easement? I know you only have a 30-foot width, but just for the 26-foot drive
Because
aisle on the street.
the parking, there's a parking easement that is given next door. I can't take that out. I can't take their parking away.
Okay.
They have every right to that, and that's what the expectation was when that was put in there and given to them. So no, I can't do a public street. There's no mechanism for me to do that. All I've got is a 30-foot ingress egress easement, which half of that's on somebody else's property. So my hands are really tied in terms of street. I can provide access, just not a public street. Thank you.
And Jason, another question here. Any of the issues making this an R1T, are any of those issues, I mean, we have the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that exists for certain properties that have issues in the way, either topographically or the way they're set up.
Mhm.
That's why that body exists. Is that another option? I'm brainstorming here.
Again, I'm going off speculation. I just haven't had anything submitted. But the site is oddly shaped. There is, as Mike is, he would have to come up with a description of what the access troubles are and present that to the board, present, the limitations of the property, and then we would have to decide on there based off a site plan that he submitted. But we have applications that anyone's always welcome to apply for an application, and we have to take them to the Board of Zoning Appeals or Planning Commission.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to deny this case. And since we have a motion and a second, we either keep discussing or I call a vote. So I will look to see if there's more discussion. And we are ready for a roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Mayor Lloyd,
Nay.
Member Friesen,
Nay.
Member Liebman,
No.
Member Moody,
No.
Vice Chairman Givens,
No.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. Okay, and we are ready for our next case.
Do we need one to say yes?
Do we need, oh,
It failed.
is it counting? Where are we at? Sorry.
It was 5 noes and 2 yeses.
Okay, so it's,
It failed.
But that was yes to say no.
were we
If we-
confused about what we were voting on?
Yes.
Okay,
So
okay.
do we need a motion to say
Okay.
yes?
I
So,
move to deny it.
so he moved to deny. So if you voted yes, that is denying it.
Yes.
So we move not to deny it.
So no is an approval.
The motion failed.
I don't know.
Well, no,
No,
it's just
that
the motion
denied the
failed,
motion.
but now
not-
it's open for
not
another
approving
motion
the
or, I mean,
So we need a motion to approve.
deny, And a yes is to deny, and a no is to approve.
Not to approve, it's to
it's
not
to approve
agree
the
with
motion to deny.
Right,
Right.
yeah. So a no would not agree with the motion to deny.
Correct.
Okay. So since that motion didn't carry, what motion I need another motion?
I believe.
Or is that a denial or an acceptance?
I think it would be
No,
best.
it's not. It's
Just to
not.
clear.
You'll have to make a motion to approve.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve and I need to know what conditions are attached to the approval.
Yes.
So I need,
I'm in favor of approving, but I really feel that we need to have residences that can be sold. That's what the people of Collegedale want. They want to be able to buy their own home as opposed to renting an apartment somewhere. So
Mr. Mayor, one thing that we could do, I believe, and Jason might correct me if I'm wrong, if this body approves, we can then apply for the horizontal property regime, which gives us that ability to sell before we actually bring the motion back for final approval. I'm thinking that process-wise, but we'll make certain that we have, if we get that box checked, then I think the commission, the body would then have the understanding and the expectation that this is a for sale product.
Hey, Jason, can we condition for a HPR requirement or a for sale?
I would
Requirement?
probably say no.
Okay.
Just, it gets really sticky when we get into ownership
No,
and
I get it.
conditions on that, yeah.
Just asking.
So can we vote on this if we don't know about spot zoning?
I'm having trouble understanding that. So tonight is either to approve or deny the request, or Mike could also request, push this at a later date as well. I'll come back for a later vote.
But you're looking to rezone it today to
Yeah.
R3.
Yes,
Is that spot zoning? I don't think we answered that question.
yes. As staff, I believe zoning this as a R3 is spot zoning.
So it's not spot zoning.
No, it is spot zoning.
So isn't that against Tennessee regulations?
There is no Tennessee state law about spot zoning, but there has been cases to where, cities have ended up in litigation because of spot zoning, but there is no TCA code against it.
I thought that was part of when we stopped annexing. We couldn't spot zone people, skip a house to go to the next one.
I'm not really sure. I know there's a moratorium put on annexations.
The conundrum that we're at is there's a lot of unanswered questions, and this body of 7 people here, can we brainstorm this through real quick to figure out exactly, how this is going to come together so we can get a vote? There's so many questions.
I think for me, it's the conditions. If we can get the R3 with the conditions, and I think we need to address the story height conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to, I think it's just defining what we mean when we say it, because I don't think it's clear here what we, because again, Spalding Code comes to mind of the parking, and I know there's no garages here, so that changes things a little bit in that definition. So I just want to make sure we understand that. And then I think we've heard from the applicant that they can adjust the structures to meet the condition 10, to stay within 3 to 6. And so for me, that's them being flexible and dropping 1 unit off the count. There's easements in place from a parking standpoint, from a property standpoint. I think the whole R1T, I think, has its whole nother set of challenges that doesn't fix anything for us. So the R3, to me, with conditions, if the applicant can work with something like that, I think that's a better solution.
I would agree.
And if I might, we do have 12 conditions that staff has come up with, and the only changes that I see would be under 1, where it says limited to development of townhomes, it would say and garages and clubhouse, and that would take care of 1. As it relates to 4, no building shall exceed 35 feet or 2.5 stories, just strike that and say 3 stories. And then number 6 is that it talks about meeting the requirements, for city regulations for townhome developments, just not public streets. That's the only caveat to 6. And then the only one I think that's left after that is 9, where it talks about street widths and street designs. And again, that just goes back to the one I just mentioned on 6. If you approve it with all of those, I think that would meet, again, the intent of the R1T, and then conditions that we can live with. If there's something that we need to work on together with staff between now and getting to city council, we can certainly do that as well.
And then I think, not to get lost on us, is Vice Mayor Johnson's comment about the sprinkling of the one that wasn't road front. And I think just clarity on that, because I don't think we put that one to rest either, what the requirement was per code for that.
I will let Matt answer that, but previous conversations I had, I don't think that sprinkling would be required except on 35 through 40, because there's not on a access that a fire truck can park in front and get to that building. So the rest would certainly be sprinkled out of that. So 35 through 40 would be the only units that would be sprinkled as proposed. Thank you.
I'm ready to entertain a motion.
If there is no motion, the project therefore dies.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's a time limit.
Seems like there's an awful lot of unanswered questions. What about a deferral? To have some of these questions looked at and answered for a later meeting. You like that as a motion?
I'm fine going with an R3
With the conditions.
with the conditions, yes. So I'll make a motion that we move forward with an R3 with the conditions specified
By the applicant.
by the applicant.
If I may, I think it might be best to defer this, and I could work with the applicant on rewriting the conditions. I think they're getting a little muddied.
We're fine with that.
I would just hate to get something approved tonight, and we're not exactly sure on what conditions are being
Okay,
approved.
that's fine.
Okay.
I think that's a wise.
So,
Motion to defer.
okay. And do we need to, so the applicant is agreeable to deferring?
Mike, if you don't mind, can you come to the mic and let us know that you're willing to defer?
I'm willing to defer for 1 month. Yes, thank you.
Then I would probably, if someone wants to do a motion, I would probably encourage that.
Okay, if we can redo the motion.
Move to defer.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Yay.
Mayor Lloyd,
Yay.
Member Freeson,
Yes.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Givens,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
See you next month.
Now we're ready to move along, guys. Okay, so our next case is zoning 2024-07. And are you going to do these individually or look at them as a grouping?
So they're individual cases. I will most likely go over the project description, or I will go through the entirety on most of them. Just under staff comments is probably when I'll just show it on the presentation so it's on the record.
Okay,
But they're essentially the same staff report, just different numbers. So zoning case 2024-07. The applicant seeks to rezone 3.7 acres located at 4940 La Colina Way from shopping center commercial C2 to residential zero lot line district R1T. If approved, the applicant intends to construct 12 townhomes at a later date, 4 units an acre. So here's the vicinity map. To the north is Appleton Pike and Appleton Villas, and there to the west is La Colina Way. So to the north, you have mixed-use town center. To the east, you have mixed-use town center. To the south, you have shopping center commercial. And to the west, you have shopping center commercial. For the project site land use, to the north, you have Appleton Pike and Appleton Villas. To the east, you have vacant land. To the south, you have a church. And to the west, you have vacant land and a proposed dental office. So here's the preliminary site plan. As we discussed in the previous case, any residential unit within the city of Collegedale has to have public road frontage. The interior of that street is private. However, they do have the flag lots going out to Appleton Pike for the units down, I guess, to the southeast. The units to the west will have frontage off La Colina Way. So here's an enlarged site plan. So the R1T requirements is a minimum of 24 feet on the lot width. The minimum front yard is 25 foot or 15 if rear loaded. The side yard is 1.5 feet between dwellings, 10 foot for dwellings with side yards. So at the end of each row, it'd be 10 foot. The rear setback is 25. The minimum lot size is 2,400, and there's no building over 35 foot or 2.5 stories. Now, the city of Collegedale has identified a need for a missing middle housing, which encompasses housing types such as townhomes. The R1T district was introduced to the city zoning ordinance as part of an effort to address the missing middle and also as an infill zone. The R1T zoning designation aims to facilitate the development of townhomes and other multifamily housing options that cater to a broader range of residents, thereby contributing to the overall housing stock in Collegedale. The proposed development is suitable for the property as it avoids wetlands, which enhances its feasibility for residential use instead of a commercial development. If the property was to remain zoned as commercial, further projects could find it difficult to mitigate potential environmental challenges. As described in the Four Corners plan, the construction of the townhomes will contribute to the city's housing supply, addressing the current demand for middle living options. This specific parcel was allocated for townhomes in the Four Corners plan. Increasing the residential population can stimulate local economic activity and create a stronger incentive for commercial development in the area. More residents can lead to greater foot traffic and demand for services, especially with the project's close proximity to downtown, Swinier Drive, and the Summit Ball Fields. Moving forward, the applicant will need to file a subdivision approval. Subsequently, they will need to submit site and civil plans for review. These plans will be evaluated to ensure all aspects of the project adhere to the City of Collegedale zoning ordinance, landscape regulations, and any applicable regulations. So here are the conditions. Number one, townhomes must consist of a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6 dwelling units in a single row. Each unit designed as one family dwelling with no other dwelling directly above or below. Each unit must have direct ground level access to the outside and be separated from adjacent units by one or more common fire resistant walls. The density of the townhomes of this development should not exceed 4 units per acre or a total of 12 units for the entire site. All dwellings constructed on the property must be designed and used exclusively as townhomes. A detailed landscaping plan must be submitted and approved, incorporating tree planting, buffer zones, and open green space as per the landscape ordinance and the R1T zone as required in the zoning ordinance. A detailed site plan for the townhome development must be submitted for site and civil review prior for the issuance of any building permits. This plan must comply with applicable city regulations for townhome developments, including parking, green space, and infrastructure. Any future modifications to the approved use of this property to allow additional types of residential structures beyond townhomes or a change in density will require a separate rezoning request or amendment to the subject to the approval of the Planning Commission and City Commission. All street widths within the development shall be subject to review and approval by the city engineer and fire marshal. Street designs must ensure adequate access for emergency vehicles and comply with city standards for safety, traffic flow, and infrastructure. No building permit will be issued until the street plan receives formal approval from both the city engineer and fire marshal. For sidewalks must be provided throughout the development, extending to all exits from the development and connect to sidewalks located in the public right-of-way. Sidewalks must meet the city standards for width, accessibility as approved by the city engineer. If the project is to be developed in phases, each phase must comply with all conditions outlined in this approval, ensuring consistency and quality and design throughout the entire development. With that, staff recommends their approval of zoning case 2024-07 with attached conditions. And the applicant is here if there's any questions.
Is there a discussion before I invite the applicant forward? Okay, the applicant would come and state your name and your address, please.
So while he's walking up, just a clarification, this was originally zone C2 just when the state came through?
Yeah, so it was preemptively upzoned, I believe, by the city with intent to have commercial. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Good evening, Madam Chair, distinguished members of the commission. My name is Kevin Tucker. I'm with ASA Engineering, the planning director. Our address is 201 Cherokee Boulevard, Chattanooga. With me tonight is Rachel Tranel, our civil engineering director, and Matt Schaefer representing the builder. The Lehman Foundation is the owner of the property. We're in agreement with all the conditions that Jason mentioned. We carefully studied your R1T zoning so that we would meet those conditions.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do have renderings of what the townhomes would look like. And we believe that there are some challenges to each of these three sites. However, they're well suited for townhome development, true townhome development. 2 stories, each unit will have a garage, it'll have a front door, public streets and sidewalks and plenty of green space.
Could we see the renderings, please?
Certainly.
Okay.
Are these going to be constructed as townhomes or townhouses?
Townhomes, townhouses, two stories, they will be for sale.
Okay, they will be for sale.
They-
Be simple.
Fee simple,
Those are
yes,
Townhouses then.
yes,
There's a difference in the construction. Is the reason I ask.
yes, sir.
So what's your price point on these?
You'll also state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Matt Shaler with Smith Douglas Homes, and our address for now is still 110 Village Road in Woodstock, Georgia. That's where our headquarters is. So that's our rendering of the townhomes. I've also got some handouts, just kind of company handouts, if y'all want to see kind of what we're about. I think at least one project has come through for us here in the city, but pass these.
Okay.
Where was that project at?
That's the Chestnut Creek project. It's townhomes and detached homes. But anyways, I think the question was pricing. So we are a public builder, but we are still majority family owned and local to Atlanta, Georgia. And we're just recently went public and moved into a couple new markets, Chattanooga definitely being one of them. And that's going to be my job, is to grow and run the Chattanooga market for us. Technically now we're still working out of the Atlanta office, hence the address here, while we're growing into our own. We're going to have a very strong presence in the Ooltewah, Collegedale, and East Brainerd areas. That's been our primary focus to come into town. And unlike other public builders, we do customize our homes. So we don't like to sell many specs. We want to pre-sell, and then we really live on the ability to upgrade our homes and let the buyers make selections. That said, we do still like to sell in the affordability range. That's what you can see on the handout. That's kind of what we've been built on, is quality and customization, but at an affordable price. On these townhomes, with this style, we haven't run all of our market studies yet, but we'd probably be in the low 3s is where we'd want to be to try and hit that, what we would consider affordable, but nice living unit there.
Do you have any playground for kids if they move into this subdivision?
I'll probably turn back over to Asa unless there's any just questions on the actual building side from the home construction, because we would just be doing the vertical construction.
We'll call you back up if
Okay,
there are more
thank you.
questions. Thank you. Or you can just sit here at the front and whatever works.
We do have adequate space for amenities. That is something that once we get to the site civil plans, we will address. I think we've heard the message from this body, and you do like amenities. I've heard dog parks and playgrounds, so that'll certainly be taken under consideration.
And as you're targeting these homes, who is your target market to buy these?
Well, I think it's young families. Wouldn't you agree, Matt?
That's correct. One, I guess, with townhomes, what we've seen in the past is, I guess there's 2 different boxes that usually fits in. Sometimes that's the retiree is the townhome. This model that we would be doing here does not have a master on the main floor. So that would probably not be our target market here. It'd be the more affordable housing option for, buying a new constructed home in the low threes is hard to do in Collegedale and Ottawa and East Brainerd. So that would be our market.
And this is all private roads going into this
Yeah, the
development?
private roads on the interior.
So have you thought about, because it's right there at the ball fields, and there's a lot of traffic in and out, anywhere from April through October, I think is when they usually stop playing ball up at the ballparks. Have you thought about the noise, and is that going to be appealing for people to live there?
That's potentially a two-edged sword. I think with young families and participating in sports, that could be a significant advantage. My experience, I haven't met Mike, but obviously Mike's a well-seasoned engineer. I'm a well-seasoned planner. And I can tell you many families like to live near parks and have that accessibility. I think if noise and speed becomes a problem, then maybe that's something that's incumbent upon the city and the police department to recognize and slow traffic down. But I think there's going to be enough landscaping and buffering that should not present a significant problem.
Because they have traffic like crazy. I mean, it's hard for people to get in and out of there. Just didn't know if you'd done your homework to figure that out yet.
Well, it's an existing condition, and we've done our homework as far as due diligence. We believe these 3 sites are excellent potential for townhome development, and particularly with the price point.
And just to make sure, staff, the applicant did acknowledge the acceptance of all those conditions?
Yes, they did. I would probably recommend adding the condition for some amenities as well, since those weren't drawn out in the staff report.
So basically on La Colina, we have 3 properties that, like, we have to do individual votes, but is there any of this discussion that needs to happen before we start taking votes? That's kind of my question.
So they're all 3 separate parcels, 3 separate applications. One they don't lie on each other to be approved or denied.
I understand that. It seems like they're on the same street and they kind of, there's some sort of a relationship if we're fundamentally changing the character of that street if we approve these 3 things. But if everybody's ready to take it case by case, that's fine as well. So
I guess just to follow up on that question, it appeared, and I could have missed something, that they were all requesting R1T, and the conditions, I mean, other than maybe the amenities comment, I think that was brought up and you made, are the conditions not the same for each case?
Yeah, conditions are all the same for each case. The only conditions that change is the amount of units and the units per acre.
Which that's based on the site plan.
Yeah,
that's
each
been
specific
submitted.
site,
So
yeah.
it was not a condition, it's based on the site plan, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess I do have a follow-up question as I think about that. Like, would there be walkability between these 3 townhome plots? Like the amenities that are here on Appison Pike are also accessible to the people who are further up the hill and that type of thing. If you guys have given that any thought.
As of now, there are no walks on La Colina Way. We would bring the access to the public road, to the right of way.
Okay, sidewalks.
Yes, ma'am.
So I see the wetlands there. Is there any concern for additional flooding or anything like that?
No, they're out of the floodway. The floodway is more towards Little Debbie and Epperson Pike on that corner. They're trying their best to stay out of that wetlands. It's most cost effective. So that's where they're at on that. T-Deck would have to review as well. And let's say they come with their plat, T-deck might require them to stay X amount of feet away from that stream line or something like that. And this project, given that it's over 2 lots, it would have to come back to the planning commission through its plat and subdivision phase.
Was there any, I'm sorry, was there anybody that wanted to speak
Thank you.
from the public?
Anybody from the public, if you'd like to speak, come up to the microphone and say your name and address. We'd be happy to hear your comments. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I am ready to listen to more discussion or entertain a motion.
I make a motion for approval
Second.
Do we need,
With the
Condition.
conditions.
with the conditions.
do we need a separate vote for each one?
If we could just have
Yes.
a commissioner give a recommendation or a motion with a specific amenity condition and then have the applicant agree to that, I think we could vote after that.
Okay. Specifically,
Is it possible to put the conditions back on the screen?
yeah, let's do that.
And, if the commission wants to say amenities approved by staff, that's something I could work with the developers on to make sure we get a
Yeah.
dog park or a small park. Something like that.
So I make the motion that we approve it based upon the conditions recommended by staff
Okay. And is that what the extra
and the amenities.
to work with staff?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
And then if we could just have the applicant let us know if they agree or not. to
Okay,
that.
sorry. Yes. Thank you.
We would agree to that additional condition.
We're ready.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Nay.
Mayor Lloyd,
Yay.
Member Freeston,
Yes.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Givens,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. Okay, our next case is zoning 2024-08.
Okay. So as I said, all these cases are essentially similar. You just get an acreage change and the amount of units change. So I'll probably go through this pretty quick. So the applicant seeks to rezone 5.7 acres located at 4921 Lockley away from shopping center commercial C2 to residential 0 lot line R1T. If approved, the applicant intends to construct 22 townhomes at a later date or 5 units per acre. So here's the parcel in question. So surrounding zoning classifications, to the north, you have shopping center commercial C2. To the east, you have shopping center commercial. To the south, you have industrial M1, which is the city of Chattanooga. This is the ball fields. And to the west, you have industrial. For surrounding land uses, currently it is vacant. To the north, you have a vacant proposed dental office. To the east, you have a church. To the south, you have Summit ball fields. And to the west, you have an industrial use. So here's the total site plan. Lockley away is the street to the south. And these will be rear loaded with a private street to the rear. And here's an enlarged site plan. So again, these are the same requirements as the previous case. Minimum lot width is 24 foot. Minimum front yard is 25 feet or 15 feet if rear loaded. Side yard is 1.5 feet between dwellings, 10 foot for dwellings with side yards. To the rear, setback is 25. Minimum lot size is 2,400 square feet. No building shall exceed 35 foot or 2.5 stories. Again, this is the same comments from the staff report. They're being recorded, so they are on the record of staff's comments. I'll save everyone some time. The only difference with this one is there is some slope issues with the property. So staff feels leaving this as commercial might be extremely difficult to develop that at a later date. This is why I'm comfortable, rezoning this to R1T. because I believe that's more of a viable product for this property. Again, moving forward, the applicant will need to file for a subdivision approval. That will have to come back to the Planning Commission. Subsequently, they will need to submit their site and civil plans for review. These plans will be evaluated to ensure all aspects of the project adhere to the City of Collegedale's zoning ordinance, landscape regulations, and any other applicable regulations. Again, these are the same conditions. The only ones that have changed is condition number 2. The density of the townhome development shall not exceed 5 units per acre, or a total of 22 units for the entire site. Sorry, I'm just double checking to make sure no other ones have changed. Again, these are the same conditions posted on the first project, and they are viewable online. So with that, staff recommends the approval of zoning case 2024-08 with the attached conditions.
Move to approve with the conditions and amenities.
Second.
Okay. I'm just going to double check one more time if there's anybody from the public who would like to comment before we vote. Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
And that was that amenities with public or with staff's
Yes.
working?
With
With-
staff.
With the amenities with staff approval. And would you please stand up and say that you agree?
So agreed.
Thank you very much.
Get ready.
We are ready for a roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Nay.
Mayor Lloyd,
Yay.
Member Freeson,
Yes.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Givens,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. Okay, our next case is zoning 2024-09, also on La Colina Way.
Okay, so zoning case 2024-09. The applicant seeks to rezone 3.9 acres located at 4904 La Colina Way from shopping center commercial C2 to residential zero lot line district R1T. If approved, the applicant intends to construct 19 townhomes at a later date, and this is at 5 units an acre. So here's a vicinity map. It shows the property line with the cement ball fields and the church. So to the north, you have shopping center commercial. To the east, you have shopping center commercial. To the south, you have industrial district M1, which is the city of Chattanooga zoning. To the west, you have shopping center commercial C2. Surrounding land uses, to the north, you have a church. To the east, you have vacant land. To the south, you have cement ball fields. To the west, you have vacant land, and the property is currently vacant. So here's the overall site plan. This one is a little different. The cul-de-sac that you see, that is a public street. And then the one that branches off that goes to the, I guess, north end of the site that we're looking at, that is private. So here's an enlarged view. Again, here are the R1T requirements. They are the same for the previous 2 cases. And again, staff comments are exactly the same. This was shown in the staff report and through the PowerPoint. So again, moving forward, the applicant will need to file for a subdivision approval. Subsequently, they will need to submit site and civil plans for the review. These plans will be evaluated to ensure all aspects of the project adhere to the City of Collegedale zoning ordinance, landscape regulations, and any other applicable regulations. Again, the same conditions other than number 2, the density of the townhome development shall not exceed 5 units per acre, or a total of 19 units for the entire site. The rest of the conditions remain the same. And the same for this page, the conditions remain the same as well. And with that, staff recommends the approval of zoning case 2024-09 with attached conditions.
And are there comments by any members of the public? And any discussion?
So why is part of this a public road and private road?
Just similar situation with our first case. All the residential lots need to meet public road frontage. This one was a little difficult just given the shape of the property. So their amendment for that was to add that public interior road so they could get frontage on those units to the north and to the west.
So the city has to take care of the public roads, of course.
That's correct, yeah.
I'll just say I've voted no so far, and you're probably wondering why. Normally, I'm in favor of stuff like this, but I think he didn't understand my question on the ball field. If you've ever been there, it is a quite busy road with, and not speeding, it's just busy. And the traffic there backs up between ball games, and they have 8 ball fields up there, I think it is. And you try to get people in and out of there, and then you also have these developments here. To me, that's a recipe for the city to have some headaches out of. And we cannot do anything about the noise because that's the city of Chattanooga, whether if it's in our city, away from this, we could do something about the noise perspective. So just in case you're wondering why I voted no.
Okay, do we have a motion in a second? Okay, so I think we're ready for that unless there's further discussion.
I'll move to approve
Okay,
with conditions, with the amenity conditions as staff recommends.
okay.
Second.
Okay, first and second, and could I have the applicant agree to amenities with, working with staff on amenities?
My cue, so agree.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson,
Nay.
Mayor Lloyd,
Yay.
Member Friesen,
Yes.
Member Lehman,
Yes.
Member Moody,
Yes,
Vice Chairman Givens,
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes. Our final order of business is our zoning ordinance and the final draft of that.
Yeah. So we're at the final stages. The zoning ordinance was presented to workshop a couple weeks ago by our consultant firm. So tonight I'm requesting the approval to recommend that the final draft be accepted by the City Commission. To save you guys from me talking too much, I do have the video from workshop that will kind of just go over what the new ordinance entails, and then we can bring it back for a vote.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Sarah Sinatra with Inspire Placemaking. It was a pleasure to work with your team to go through this. And I just want to point out, I'm going to go over some of the highlights of the ordinance update. Thank you. This was not a total rewrite and start over. The idea was really clean up to make it a more usable document. We went really section by section and worked with Jason to find out where there were inconsistencies, some challenges, and really worked on and updating the language. There we go. Just want to also go through the public engagement. I know that it was explained that there was like a charrette type meeting. We also had a public website that people provided information to, and we had a stakeholder meeting as well. So we addressed known problem areas. This is areas that were unclear for residents, for developers, also troublesome for staff. When we don't have an ordinance that is predictable, it causes a lot of gray area, and that's where you get loopholes and things like that within your ordinance. So we tightened up that language. There was also a lot of out-of-date language, out-of-date uses, so we simplified that. At the end of the presentation, I just wanted to quickly go through to show you when you had the usability of the code and the fact that there's now a table of permitted uses. We consolidated chapters. There were 21 different chapters in the code originally. There's now 9. Every separate use had different chapters associated, which makes it a really hard document to use. And so we cleaned that up. So when we went through I know this is a little hard to see, and I'm sorry for that, but if you had visited the website that we had, there were 195 views of the website. People gave some feedback. All of that information is memorialized, and we're going to be giving that as an appendix to Jason, so it'll remain as public record. There was also stakeholder meetings to go over with the code users and residents to understand the limitations within the code and some preferences. So like I mentioned, some of the major changes were updating definitions, uses, titles, procedure, updating references to Tennessee code, and up to date to make sure that they were accurate. We also have to make sure that things like the sign code is up to date with federal standards as well. When we looked at development review, this is where we spent quite a bit of time going through and updating. We wanted to lay out the membership, the procedure, role of the Planning Commission boards to make sure it's in accordance with Tennessee code, to update the procedures and requirement for the site plans, and the requirement for electronic review. So the way that the code read originally, it wasn't exactly how it was being in practice because there was outdated references and so forth. So we made sure we worked with your team to find out, what's the best way? What are you doing now? And we want to make sure that you'd be able to take that, use that as a checklist, and so that there's, again, predictability. We also looked at parking. We updated the parking and circulation. So what we found was that there were a lot of uses that either didn't have parking requirements, or the uses that were stated within the parking code were not actually uses that were within the city. So we made sure that all of that matched. We implemented new provisions for shared and temporary parking. The idea is to allow development to continue and to move forward, and for things to develop without a hindrance of parking, but also to provide good parking standards so it actually meets the needs and the requirements. We did the sign code we put it in a table format because signs are really difficult to interpret sometimes. And so we felt that once we put it into a table, you look at it by the zoning district, we can then see what kind of signs are permitted. There's cross references. There's easy language about the measurement provisions. A lot of times when even staff is reviewing it, there's some gray area again. So we made sure that the measurement provisions for calculating signs were all clear within the document. We expanded landscape requirements for planned developments, changed open space requirements to encourage more active spaces to say what counts as calculating open space by limiting how stormwater and utility areas count towards the total. We required open space, including access points, to be shown within the site plan. And then, like I mentioned, even though we updated all the uses, we also put them into tables, both for the uses and the dimensions. So I'm going to quickly just show you, this is just a little snippet. I know that's really hard to read up there, but I'll show you when I just pull up the code real quick, that each use is listed in the actual use table, so it's a lot easier to follow. But also, all the dimensions are all provided within the table. Okay, so before we go into question and answer, I can just show you quickly the so the new ordinance, we tried to have an easy use of reference. So the idea is to make it more usable, like I said. So we'll be able to just click on it. And we tried to keep it similar in nature to what you had previously so people know where to go, but again, updated. And so let me just show you. When you go into the use regulations, which most people are used to going to, you'll find the use table, and you'll be able to see, the dimensional table, and you'll be able to see that if it's the ag zoning district, what the setbacks are, what the requirements are. Where before it was all listed in different sections of the ordinance, it was a little bit harder to follow. So we also found that previously, like I was mentioning, every use had its own chapter. So instead, and that means if you were trying to find what type of use was allowed in a certain zoning district, you'd have to go into each one of those districts separately and read through each one to see where it was, to see where you'd be able to place that use. Now, we put them into a table with all the uses are stated, plus if any of them have additional standards, it's all right here. So that it's a lot easier for all users, whether it's the public, whether it's staff, or whether it's commission looking at it, to be all located in one simple spot. Just want to point out there were no map changes associated with this. So it's important to point out a lot of times when a community goes through a major overhaul like this, there's significant mapping changes too. But that really wasn't the intent behind this project. It was to provide an update of the ordinance in a more useful fashion. So there might be modified uses and in that way, but there's not an actual map change associated with it.
Okay, that's it. So any questions on the zoning ordinance or?
Does it do everything you need it to do?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so much easier to read too.
Do you need a motion from this body?
Yes, it would be a recommendation to the city commission.
To accept and approve it.
Essentially, yes. My hope would be.
I make a motion to accept and approve it.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Yay.
Mayor Lloyd.
Yay.
Member Friesen.
Yes.
Member Lehman.
Yes.
Member Moody.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Givens.
Yes.
Chairwoman Gray.
Yes.
I believe most of you have already completed the training video that I linked. So in essence of time as well, we will not do that training video tonight. Again, I will send out some more training opportunities. I know some of you are doing training in Cleveland, just to make sure we get those 4 hours before the end of the year.
And
One more hour.
anything else? We are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Did you get all your hours in? Not quite. I got one more.
Good meeting.
Well, I won't come to your house tonight.
Okay.